Hello, I am Anne Yagi, President of Eight Trees and retired Ministry of Natural Resources biologist. I'm here to present the Wainfleet Bog ecosystem, a case study on restoration. Today we are meeting virtually from across Canada and the United States, and I would like to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all Inuit, Métis, First Nations, and Six Nations people that call this land home. As an ecologist, I see the land, water, air, and animals as an integrated part of our world, and I cherish the traditional knowledge of Indigenous people, the first keepers of the land where I live. The Wainfleet Bog is home to 8 snake species, 4 turtle species, 8 frog species, 1 toad, 2 salamander species, many of which are at risk. There are also at-risk migratory birds, the whippoorwill, overwintering short-eared owls, and the Wainfleet Bog is a migratory waterfowl stopover area. Wainfleet Bog is also a significant wintering area for deer, ruffed grouse, and wild turkeys. The Niagara region is located between Lake Ontario to the north, Niagara River to the east, Lake Erie to the south, and the Grand River to the west. The Wainfleet Bog is one of Niagara region's most unique wetlands, located just north of Lake Erie near Port Colborne. It is the largest continuous wetlands ecosystem in Niagara. It's more than 1,500 hectares in size. It's one of the oldest ecosystems, more than 5,000 years old, and it's been nominated as a Canadian Key Biodiversity Area. The site is also home to species at risk populations, the Massasauga rattlesnake, eastern ribbon snake, and species at risk turtles. These populations are isolated from other populations in Ontario. The bog restoration began in 1998, led by the Conservation Authority and Ministry of Natural Resources staff leading the surveys, monitoring, and analysis. Experimental interior peat dams were used to raise water levels and to test what was needed to regrow sphagnum and other bog plant species. We knew very little about the species that lived there. Reptiles and amphibians were thought to be the most vulnerable to habitat changes because they are resident here. They can't move elsewhere. The site is isolated. Massasauga rattlesnakes were thought to be an urban legend. Beavers, another bog species, became re-established in the late 2005, and by 2010 a decline in species at risk encounters were observed. There was also a decline in habitat quality, and in 2012 and 2016 the bog was on fire. Carbon emissions when the bog is dried down equal to about 40,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide, or about 7,500 small cars a year. Ecosystem hydrology and species at risk monitoring continues today. When beaver dams are present in the municipal drain, the bog hydrology was stable, bog plant communities expanded, especially sphagnum expanded right across the site. Storm events were absorbed, turtle populations improved, and over time the Massasauga populations also increased. Stable periods are these times. And this is all below ground surface, by the way, but these are stable times. When when the dams were removed from the municipal drain, water levels dropped, and that's these. The green line is actually the water levels in the drain, and the whole bog itself responded to this drop. And when that happened, hibernation sites for turtles were dry, and they were exposed to freezing conditions and predators. Eventually, beavers responded to the removal of dams and rebuilt new dams in the municipal drain. And if this occurred during winter, snake hibernation sites flooded in the low-lying areas in the peat mine fields, while higher elevation sites were not affected by the change. It is the change in water levels during sensitive time periods that impact species at risk the most. And removing beaver dams removed the opportunity to maintain an elevated stable hydrology and prevented the continuation of the bog ecosystem restoration project. So looking back at the oldest aerial imagery we find, the bog was least impacted by drainage in the 1930s. The municipal drain was 300 meters south of the bog in the clay farm fields, and that's the light blue line here. And just above that, you'll notice a light color of gray. Well, that's the discharge area of the natural moat feature of the bog in the 1930s. And that's significant because that is where the drain is today. So between the 1930s and the 1940s, 50s, the new municipal drain was placed 300 meters north into this moat edge. And that facilitated the peat mining and drainage of the bog. Today, there are still interior ditches connected to the municipal drain. That's these blue lines, and they are connected to the municipal drain in this new section here. The municipal drain has sturdy clay banks that will accommodate a control structure, and we anticipate a single control structure here will help the Conservation Authority be able to control all the water levels in this bog feature from this point. So this would separate the municipal drain actions and allow more control of the bog hydrology, so we can reach that stable hydrology, which is our preferred long-term goal. To date, we have collected background data and information from 1998 to the present day, and we know what's wrong, and we know how to restore the bog. We've met with staff and agencies, but we do not yet have approval from either the township or the Conservation Authority to move the drain. The engineer's report is still open for the first time in 40 years, which we think is a good time to make this type of drain location change. The agencies propose to block some of the ditches as a short-term stopgap solution until more engineering work and EIS work is completed. I mean, this is an interim measure because these dams, like the previous experimental ones, will not last. Now, at the webinar, we are bringing it forward to the public for further discussion, and we have a panel of experts here to help address your questions. Thank you very much. Our experts are Ed Sturzik, the keynote speaker, Robin Van Stone from Six Nations, Mark Jemison, the Drainage Superintendent from the Township of Wainfleet, Bill Mays, the Drainage Superintendent from Norfolk County, has a lot of experience with using the Drainage Act and in restoring wetlands. We have Dr. Jim Patterson here. He's a scientist from Ducks Unlimited. Jen Hawes is the coordinator for Island Press, and we have 8 Trees staff, Catherine Yagi, is here to help deal with these questions.